Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we cut through the noise and give you the essential insights you need to be truly well-informed. Today, we're plunging into a topic that, on the surface, might sound like pure science fiction, but it is very much real, and its implications are, well, they're unfolding right now. Imagine a world where all your digital secrets, your bank details, your medical records, even the most highly classified national security documents could be effortlessly decrypted. And crucially, this isn't about some distant future where quantum computers suddenly, switch on. It's about data stolen today, remaining encrypted for now, but compromised and decrypted years from now, with absolutely no way to ever detect that a retrospective breach has even occurred. That's not a hypothetical scenario, it's the looming reality of the quantum computing era.
It's truly a stark reality check for our digital age, yeah. It highlights how the very foundations of our online security are being fundamentally challenged. Challenged by an emerging technology that, frankly, many are only just beginning to get their heads around.
Absolutely. So this deep dive is all about post-quantum cryptography, or PQC, the absolutely essential upgrade our digital world needs to survive this coming quantum era. And we're going to really zero in on Australia's ambitious and in some ways uniquely challenging position in this global race to secure our future. Our mission for you, our curious listener, is to quickly but thoroughly grasp the immense urgency, identify the key global players, and understand the practicalities of securing our digital future against a threat that is not just on the horizon, but is already very much present. We're here to extract the most important insights, give you surprising facts, and help you cut through the complexity to truly understand what matters in this critical landscape.
And it's vital to recognize that this isn't merely a technical issue confined to government agencies or large corporations or, just IT departments. The implications for your personal privacy, for national security, and for broader economic stability are profound and widespread. Understanding PQC is, well, it's quickly becoming a civic necessity, impacting pretty much everyone who uses a digital device.
So, to really appreciate the solution, PQC, we first need to grasp the problem. What exactly are these cryptographically relevant quantum computers, or CRQCs, and why are they such an absolute game changer for our digital security?
Okay, so at their core, CRQCs are machines that harness the, mind-bending principles of quantum mechanics, things like superposition and entanglement, to perform calculations in ways classical computers just cannot.
Yeah.
Think of a conventional computer bit as a light switch that's either on 1 or off 0. Simple enough. A quantum bit, or qubit, on the other hand, can be both on and off simultaneously, thanks to superposition. It's like a dimmer switch that can be at multiple settings at once. And entanglement is where 2 or more qubits become inextricably linked, sharing the same fate no matter how far apart they are.
That's spooky.
Yucky, right. These properties allow quantum computers to explore many possibilities at once, giving them this unparalleled ability to solve certain complex mathematical problems at, frankly, unprecedented speeds.
So, if I understand correctly, it's not just about them being faster in a conventional sense, like a faster processor. It's that they can solve different kinds of problems that our current encryption methods rely on for their security, right? It's a fundamental shift in how we approach computation itself.
Precisely. That's the critical distinction. Our current encryption, like RSA and elliptic curve cryptography, or ECC, which secure everything from your online banking and shopping to confidential government communications, relies on mathematical problems that are computationally infeasible for classical computers to solve in any reasonable time frame. Imagine a digital lock so complex that even the fastest conventional supercomputer would take, billions of years to brute force open. CRQCs completely change that equation, not by being incrementally faster, but by approaching these problems from a fundamentally different quantum mechanical angle.
And there are two main algorithms that really highlight this threat, essentially demonstrating this quantum advantage. The big one, which sounds like the digital equivalent of an atomic bomb for encryption, is Shor's algorithm.
It truly is. Shor's algorithm, developed by mathematician Peter Shor back in the 90s, is an absolute game changer. It can factorize large integers and solve discrete logarithm problems exponentially faster than any classical computer. To put it simply, it cleverly leverages quantum properties, like quantum Fourier transforms, to efficiently find the period in a mathematical function. And that period finding is the cornerstone for breaking the very problems our current public key encryption, like RSA, ECC, and the digital signature algorithm, or DSA, relies upon.
And these are the systems that underpin the security of practically everything we do online. Every secure connection, every HTTPS log icon, every digital signature that verifies identity.
Exactly. Once a sufficiently powerful quantum computer running Shor's algorithm becomes operational, a cryptographically relevant quantum computer. These foundational systems will be rendered entirely ineffective, broken. The consequences are truly far-reaching. Sensitive data could be exposed, digital signatures could be forged with impunity. Imagine the chaos of official government documents or financial transactions being easily faked and universally accepted as legitimate. And critical infrastructure that relies on these foundational security protocols would be fundamentally weakened, perhaps even brought down.
That's a chilling prospect, really. But Shor's algorithm isn't the only one we need to worry about, is it? There's also Grover's algorithm, which sounds less like a total destruction of encryption and more like a significant weakening.
That's a very good way to frame it, yeah. Grover's algorithm isn't a direct threat to public key cryptography in the same way Shor's is, but it can search an unsorted database quadratically faster than classical algorithms. Think of it like finding a specific name in a massive unsorted phone book much, much quicker. Its primary impact is on symmetric key cryptography, such as the Advanced Encryption Standard, or AES. AES is widely used for mass data encryption. Think securing files on your computer, encrypting large databases, or protecting bulk communications.
So it wouldn't necessarily break AES outright and reveal all the data instantly, but it would make it much easier to guess the key, effectively reducing its strength significantly.
Precisely. It significantly reduces the security margin. For example, a 128-bit AES key, which currently offers immense security against classical attacks, would effectively be reduced to the strength of a 64-bit key against a quantum computer running Grover's algorithm. And 64-bit security is, well, breakable. To maintain the same level of security in the face of this quantum threat, symmetric encryption would need to use much longer key lengths, for instance, doubling the key length from a 128 to 256 bits for AES. While technically feasible, this represents a considerable operational change and burden for organizations. It requires significant upgrades to infrastructure, software, processes. It affects performance, everything, across the board.
Okay, so the solution can't be to just make our current keys longer and hope for the best, especially for the public key stuff. Shor breaks. We need something fundamentally different, new mathematical foundations. That's where post-quantum cryptography, PQC, comes in.
That's exactly right. PQC is about creating entirely new cryptographic algorithms, built on mathematical problems that are believed to be resistant to both classical and quantum attacks. That's the key part, resistant to both. Instead of relying on the difficulty of factoring large prime numbers, for instance, PQC explores different mathematical foundations, often involving complex algebraic structures or geometric problems.
Can you give us a few examples of these new methods? What do these new kinds of hard problems look like? They sound pretty complex.
Certainly. Some of the leading contenders being standardized, mainly through that NISP process we mentioned, include lattice-based cryptography. This relies on the difficulty of finding the shortest vector in a high-dimensional lattice. Imagine a complex repeating grid structure in many dimensions. It's a problem quantum computers don't seem to have an efficient way to solve. This approach has yielded algorithms like the NIST-selected MLChem for encryption, that's key encapsulation mechanism, and MLDSA for digital signatures. Then there's hash-based cryptography, such as SLHDSA, which cleverly derives security from the properties of standard cryptographic hash functions, which are already believed to be quantum resistant to a large degree. And also code-based cryptography, which uses the challenge of decoding general linear error-corrected codes, another problem thought to be hard for quantum computers. These new approaches offer a diverse range of security properties, moving away from the specific vulnerabilities exploited by Shor's algorithm.
That really clarifies the nature of the threat and the direction of the solution. But what makes this problem so immediately pressing, even before a powerful quantum computer is fully operational? This isn't just about Q-Day, the day a quantum computer becomes cryptographically relevant, is it? There's a very real and present danger already at play.
That's one of the most crucial points many people misunderstand about the quantum threat. And it's why the urgency is so profound now. The harvest now, decrypt later, or HNDL threat isn't a future scenario, it's a manifest reality. It's being actively employed today by sophisticated adversaries, typically well-resourced nation-states. They are systematically and, crucially, silently collecting and storing vast amounts of encrypted data.
So they're not just waiting for quantum computers to miraculously appear, they're operating on the strategic assumption that powerful quantum computers will appear. And they are already collecting all the encrypted data they can get their hands on, with the explicit intent to decrypt it later. Is that right?
Precisely. Their goal is to decrypt this stored data in the future, when a sufficiently powerful CRQC becomes available. This is happening right now, silently in the background, fundamentally shaping the future of national security and economic espionage. And the data most vulnerable to this H&DL strategy is anything with a long-term confidentiality requirement. Think of classified government information that needs to remain secret for decades, or highly sensitive intellectual property like new drug formulas, advanced engineering designs, maybe cutting-edge battery schematics, even long-term financial records, personal medical histories, or biometric data that could be used for future identification are all targets, anything valuable long-term.
That's truly insidious. It means a data breach that occurs today, even if the data remains encrypted and seems safe for now, could be silently compromised years from now. And you mentioned there would be no way to detect this retrospective decryption at the time it happens. That's a huge, almost untraceable problem.
It is, and that's the insidious nature of H&DL. In a conventional breach, you usually know when it happened, you can trace the intrusion, maybe identify the source, and attempt to remediate. You get an alert. With H&DL, the initial compromise event, the harvesting is invisible. The data just gets copied while still encrypted. The actual damage only manifests years down the line when the data is finally decrypted by a future quantum computer. By then, it's far too late to even know precisely who accessed the data, how to undo the damage, or what critical national secrets or commercial advantages have been revealed. The lack of an immediate detection mechanism makes it incredibly dangerous for any information with a long security shelf life. The urgency of this situation is profoundly underscored by something called Mosca's theorem, a strategic framework developed by Dr. Mikhail Mosca at Waterloo. This theorem provides a stark, almost undeniable mathematical rationale for immediate action, expressed as the inequality x plus yz.
Okay, Mosca's theorem. So tell us what those variables mean in practical terms, and maybe give us a quick hypothetical scenario to bring it to life. X plus y greater than z.
Certainly. In this equation, X represents the security shelf life of the protected information. How long does this data need to stay secret? For instance, consider highly sensitive medical records that must remain confidential for 50 years, or government intelligence that needs to be secured for 30 years. That's X. Y represents the time required to transition complex, interconnected systems to new cryptographic standards, PQC in this case. And history shows this is a deeply complex, multi-year endeavor, often taking a decade or more for large organizations or entire sectors. That's Y. And Z represents the time until the CRQC is developed and operational, the time until the threat arrives. So let's use your medical records example. They need 50 years of security, X15. And let's say it takes 10 years to fully migrate all healthcare systems to PQC, Y10. Then X plus Y equals 60. If a CRQC is expected in, say, 15 years, Z15, then 6015. The inequality holds, meaning that medical data harvested today will be compromised in the future because we won't have migrated our systems in time to protect it for its full required lifespan.
Wow, that makes the reality incredibly clear. If the lifespan of the data plus the time it takes to upgrade our systems is greater than the time until a quantum computer arrives, we're already in trouble. It implies that for long-lived data, we may be needed to start yesterday.
Exactly. The theorem provides a stark mathematical rationale for immediate action. The clock is ticking relentlessly. And for long-lived data, the quantum vulnerability is not some abstract future event, but a present and ongoing risk. This helps us dispel a common misconception, the idea that PQC is only a concern for Q-Day, that single dramatic moment when a quantum computer is proven cryptographically relevant, which, by the way, some experts predict could be as early as 2029 or the early 2030s.
So it's not about waiting for a single future moment of quantum collapse like Y2K, but for crypto. It's about recognizing that the vulnerability is already active, already being exploited by sophisticated state actors through H&DL, and the strategic calculus must shift immediately.
Absolutely. That wait for Q-Day thinking overlooks the fact that the quantum vulnerability is not a future event. It is a present and ongoing risk, a slow-motion breach unfolding in real time. The strategic framing of the problem must fundamentally shift from preparing for a future threat to actively mitigating a current and ongoing threat right now. The true urgency is not a single future moment of collapse, but the continuous exfiltration of valuable data that is happening right now, with decryption to follow, potentially revealing national secrets and intellectual property from decades past whenever that CRQC arrives. So, to truly grasp the urgency, it's critical to understand that Mosca's theorem provides this undeniable logic for why waiting is simply no longer an option. The long-term security shelf life of data, combined with the often slow pace of system migration, means we are already deep in a race against time.
That really drives home the immediacy of the threat, and the implications of this aren't just for governments or big tech companies in some abstract sense. This affects the very fabric of our society, our economy, and even your personal security in ways that are deeply personal and national.
Yeah, the implications of a widespread cryptographic failure would extend far, far beyond simple data theft or a privacy breach. We're talking about a fundamental existential risk to a nation's operational integrity, its national security, and its economic stability. It's not just a breach, it's a potential systemic collapse of trust and functionality that could bring our highly interconnected digital world to, well, a grinding halt.
And the most terrifying part of that, for me anyway, is the threat to critical infrastructure. We're talking about things like our power grids, water supply, transportation networks, hospitals, the things we rely on every single day. How would a cryptographic failure cascade through those essential services?
The potential for catastrophic consequences is immense, extending into every facet of modern life. It's hard to overstate. Critical sectors such as healthcare, energy, transportation, and telecommunications rely heavily on cryptographic protection for everything. Securing communications, authenticating control signals, ensuring data integrity. It's all built on crypto. Many of these systems, including supervisory control and data acquisition, or SCADA systems, which manage industrial processes like power generation or water treatment, are deeply interconnected. Imagine traffic control systems suddenly failing because their authentication is compromised, leading to gridlock and potentially catastrophic accidents across major cities. Or hospital systems unable to securely access patient records or administer treatments because their internal networks are disrupted, putting lives directly at risk. A single point of cryptographic failure, maybe at a widely used library or protocol, could trigger a cascading effect across these deeply interconnected networks, leading to widespread service outages, public safety risks, and operational chaos on an unprecedented scale. For a nation like Australia, which relies heavily on secure communications and interconnected digital systems across its vast geography, such a failure could be truly disastrous.
Beyond the lights going out or traffic grinding to a halt, there's also a significant geopolitical and economic disadvantage at play, isn't there? This isn't just about losing secrets, it's about losing influence, competitive edge, and ultimately national wealth.
Indeed. Quantum-enabled cyber attacks could be weaponized for espionage and sabotage on a scale we haven't seen before, to compromise sensitive government and military communications, leaving less prepared countries vulnerable to a decisive disadvantage on the global stage, potentially altering the balance of power. Economically, the failure of cryptographic standards would lead to severe financial consequences. This includes the direct cost of massive data breaches, remediation, fines, lawsuits, and the intangible, but equally damaging, loss of public and private sector trust that underpins our entire digital economy. Who trusts a system that can be broken? Industry estimates suggest that unprotected systems vulnerable to these future quantum attacks could lead to losses exceeding $1 trillion annually in cyber incidents globally by 2030. That's a figure that is almost incomprehensible in its scale. $1 trillion every year.
$1 trillion annually, that's a staggering figure. And for Australia specifically, what does this mean for its economic future and its standing on the world stage?
Well, in Australia, quantum vulnerabilities could critically undermine the projected economic benefits of quantum technologies themselves. There's a projection of a $6.1 billion GDP contribution from quantum tech by 2045. But if the underlying digital security isn't quantum safe, that potential evaporates. It's not just about preventing loss, it's about protecting future growth, safeguarding innovation, and ensuring Australia remains a competitive player in the global digital economy that the quantum sector is poised to deliver. If its foundational digital infrastructure is compromised, it stifles innovation, scares away investment, and basically kneecaps that future potential.
And this also comes back to long-term data protection and personal privacy. We often think of our data as needing to be secure for a few years, maybe 7 for financial records, but some information has a much, much longer shelf life, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and this is where the HNDL threat is particularly insidious on a personal level, not just national. Data encrypted today, think medical records that must remain confidential for decades, sensitive financial histories, biometric data like fingerprints or facial scans, or critical research like drug discovery formulas and battery designs, has an incredibly long shelf life. If stolen now, it could be decrypted later, affecting entire industries like pharmaceuticals, energy, and finance for years. And profoundly exposing individuals on a personal level, imagine genetic data or lifelong health conditions being revealed decades later. More broadly, without PQC, nations risk losing sovereignty over their digital infrastructure. Think about it. Quantum supremacy could enable mass surveillance or asymmetric warfare on an unprecedented scale.
And socially, it exacerbates privacy erosion, reigniting long-standing debates over the security of encrypted apps and the integrity of digital IDs, which are becoming more common.
So when we talk about what this all means for you, the listener, it truly means everything. From the security of your banking app and your personal health records, to the operational integrity of your local hospital, and even the nation's critical services and military communications. This isn't just an abstract concern for engineers or spies, it's deeply personal and national, impacting your daily life in ways you might not even realize yet.
And that's precisely why PQC isn't just a technical upgrade, it's a strategic imperative for survival in the digital age. It ensures something called crypto agility, the ability for our systems to seamlessly transition and upgrade their cryptographic foundations without disruption. This safeguards everything from everyday banking transactions to highly classified defense communications. Ignoring it invites, well, some call it a quantum apocalypse, where outdated encryption fails catastrophically, bringing our digital world to a grinding halt and making all our past and present secrets vulnerable. The consequences are truly existential, forcing us to redefine what long-term security even means in the digital age. It's a paradigm shift.
This raises an important question. Given the existential stakes and the immediate ongoing threat, who are the key players in this global quantum race? And critically for our focus today, who poses the most imminent threat to a nation like Australia?
Right. In the global race for quantum supremacy, the landscape is pretty clearly defined by significant investments and strategic intent from various nations. While many countries are developing quantum technology, China and the United States stand out as the undisputed leaders, though they have different strengths and approaches.
So where do these two superpowers diverge in their quantum pursuits? How do their strategies differ on a high level?
Well, China leads by a significant margin in public investment, having allocated an impressive $15 billion, maybe more, to quantum technology. They've aggressively pursued large-scale national projects, including building the world's largest quantum research facility in Hefei. It shows a clear top-down national commitment. The United States, in contrast, leads the quantum private sector, securing an impressive 44% of global funding in that area. Venture capital is flowing there. And the U.S. also excels in the quality and output of top-cited quantum research papers, fostering a really robust innovation ecosystem, more bottom-up perhaps. Beyond these two giants, the European Union, Germany, the UK, Canada, and Australia itself are also significant players, each contributing to the quantum ecosystem in various specialized areas.
But when we talk about an imminent threat to Australia, specifically regarding that harvest now, decrypt later strategy we keep mentioning, the sources we looked at are quite clear on who that primary adversary is considered to be.
Yes. The evidence points definitively towards China as the primary imminent threat to Australia in this context. Their rapid advancements, coupled with an explicit strategic focus on quantum technologies, ongoing geopolitical tensions in the Indo-Pacific, and, frankly, a well-documented history of sophisticated cyber espionage.
It all presents a uniquely acute and present challenge to Australia's national security and economic interests.
And China has made quantum a cornerstone of its national strategy, haven't they? It's not just a side project for them. It seems integral to their future plans.
Absolutely. China has explicitly made quantum technology a strategic task and priority as part of its overarching goal to become a manufacturing powerhouse and to master core technologies to achieve technological self-reliance. It's central to their vision. Their massive public investment, as I said, far surpasses any other nation's, demonstrating a long-term, coordinated strategic commitment. China's 14th five-year plan, covering 2021 to 2025, heavily prioritizes quantum, and they've seen quantum-related patents surge by 400% since 2015. Huge increase. They're demonstrably investing heavily those harvest now, decrypt later capabilities we discussed. It fits their strategic goals perfectly, and they've already demonstrated quantum supremacy in tasks like boson sampling, a specialized type of calculation involving photons that proves their quantum computational advantage over classical machines for certain problems. They've also launched the Mishia satellite for quantum key distribution, or QKD, over 5,000 kilometers, showcasing their lead in long-distance quantum communications.
So they're not just investing, they're demonstrating real-world capabilities and a deep strategic intent. And this isn't a new threat vector either. China has a long and well-documented history of state-sponsored cyber espionage targeting intellectual property and government secrets globally, including in Australia.
That's a critical point that cannot be overstated. China has a well-documented history of sophisticated state-sponsored cyber attacks. The Australian Signals Directorate, or ASD, alongside its Five Eyes partners, that's the intelligence alliance between Australia, Canada, New Zealand, the UK, and the US, has released joint advisories on Chinese state-sponsored threat actors. Groups like Salt Typhoon and Volt Typhoon, these advanced persistent threat, or APT groups, have been observed targeting networks globally, including specifically in Australia, Canada, the UK, and the US. These operations are systematically designed to feed a global espionage system, frequently targeting critical infrastructure, government networks, and telecommunications to steal military intelligence and invaluable intellectual property. Australia specifically is considered a frontline in Indo-Pacific espionage, with reports of China recruiting scientists and stealing quantum IP at an industrial scale. It's a concerted effort.
And they're not just relying on global standards for their security either, are they? They're developing their own sovereign standards, which has much wider implications for international cooperation and interoperability.
That's correct. And it's a significant geopolitical move that worries many Western observers. The geopolitical significance of China's quantum ambitions is further underscored by its decision to launch its own quantum-resistant encryption standards through the Institute of Commercial Cryptography Standards, or ICCS. This move, which parallels a similar historical pattern with Russia developing its own cryptographic standards like GHOST, is widely believed to be motivated by concerns over potential backdoors in U.S.-led standards, like those from NIST, and a broader push for technological self-reliance and sovereignty. Secure and controllable is the mantra. This approach directly contrasts with the collaborative, globally aligned, open process led by NIST, which Western nations, including Australia and its allies, typically follow.
So this creates a risk of cryptographic fragmentation where different major powers use incompatible standards. What does that mean for Australia and its allies? In terms of practical interoperability and security, it sounds like a nightmare.
It could be. This strategic pursuit of a sovereign standard creates a real global risk of cryptographic fragmentation, where incompatible standards could severely disrupt international commerce, global supply chains, and crucial intelligence sharing among allies. Imagine trying to conduct secure international trade or share sensitive military intelligence when your cryptographic systems literally don't speak the same secure language. It breaks things. For Australia, this reality requires a careful balancing act, aligning with the NIST standards of its Five Eyes and AUKUS partners, which is crucial for interoperability, while simultaneously investing in its own sovereign capabilities to understand and manage these risks. This dual approach aims to prevent dependence on foreign technologies that could be compromised or strategically withheld in a future conflict, safeguarding its national interests. It's a hedge.
And Australia's geographical location and economic ties also play a significant role here, amplifying its vulnerabilities to this specific adversary, China.
Indeed. Australia's proximity in the Indo-Pacific, its deep economic dependencies, particularly on mineral exports, some of which are essential for quantum hardware and manufacturing globally, and its strategic alliances, like AUKUS, all heighten its vulnerabilities. China's dominance in rare earth elements, for instance, could provide a strong lever for economic coercion by restricting supplies essential for building quantum hardware. Geopolitical tensions over flashpoints like Taiwan or the South China Sea could quickly escalate to include quantum-enabled cyber warfare, where Australia would undoubtedly find itself on the front line. While experts historically predicted cryptographically relevant quantum computers, or CRQCs, by the 2030-2040 timeframe, China's rapid progress, exemplified by their Juzhang quantum computer and other advancements, suggests these threats could materialize much earlier. All this firmly positions China as Australia's top adversary in this quantum race, particularly regarding the HNDL threat.
That really lays out the threat landscape clearly, and Australia's specific exposure. But here's where it gets particularly interesting, because Australia isn't just sitting by and watching this unfold passively. It's taken a remarkably bold and ambitious stance against this threat, setting a timeline that has definitely raised some eyebrows globally.
That's right. Australia has established a very clear national-level plan to address the quantum threat, building upon a pretty robust foundation of policy and governance. It's a comprehensive, top-down approach signaling serious intent.
So what does that foundational policy framework look like? What's guiding Australia's strategic response to such an immediate and profound threat?
Okay, the primary guiding document is the 2023-2030 Australian Cybersecurity Strategy. This is the big national roadmap. It has this ambitious vision of making Australia a world leader in cybersecurity by 2030. It's explicitly designed as a whole-of-nation endeavor, which underscores the shift of cybersecurity from being seen as solely a technical IT issue to a paramount national priority involving everyone. Crucially, it emphasizes the importance of strong public-private partnerships to achieve this,
recognizing that government cannot possibly solve this alone. The strategy is also supported by 6 conceptual cyber shields that provide layers of defense, including things like safe technology, protected critical infrastructure, and the proactive development of sovereign capabilities. The technical authority spearheading this transition for the government is the Australian Signals Directorate, or ASD, through its Australian Cybersecurity Centre, the ACSC. The ASD's Information Security Manual, the ISM, provides a comprehensive cybersecurity framework for government and increasingly influences the private sector. It aligns with global standards like those from NIST and actively encourages the use of ASD-approved cryptographic algorithms, including future PQC ones.
But the most striking element of Australia's plan, the one that really stands out internationally, is its incredibly aggressive 2030 timeline for PQC adoption. This is a very bold move, isn't it? Especially compared to others.
It's an exceptionally bold strategic statement, yeah. It demonstrates a high level of perceived urgency from the top levels of government. The ASD has set an ambitious deadline of 2030 for Australian organizations, particularly in government and critical infrastructure, to completely phase out vulnerable encryption algorithms from what they term high-assurance cryptographic equipment, or HACE. Now, HACE typically refers to systems securing the most sensitive government, military, and critical infrastructure data, the crown jewels, basically. This directive specifically targets widely used public key cryptographic algorithms such as RSA, ECDSA, and ECDH, the one Shore breaks, and also the SHA-256 hashing algorithm, likely due to concerns about Grover's algorithm impacting signature security or collision resistance in the long term.
And how does that 2030 deadline compare to what its key allies are doing? That sounds significantly faster than, say, the US or the UK's plans.
You're absolutely right. It is significantly faster. This timeline is a bold strategic statement because it is a full 5 years earlier than the 2035 deadline set by key allies like the United States and the United Kingdom for their government systems. The rationale behind this aggressive stance seems to be a proactive measure to preempt that harvest now, decrypt later threat we keep talking about, particularly for sensitive data that requires a very long security shelf life, which is common in government and defense. By setting such an early deadline, the Australian government is signaling its high-level assessment of the quantum threat and its profound urgency. It's trying to position itself as a global frontrunner in quantum resilience.
Beyond the policy and deadlines, Australia is also making significant tangible investments in building sovereign capabilities, right? They're putting real money behind this vision.
Absolutely. The National Quantum Strategy, released in May 2023, formalized the government's intent to invest heavily in quantum research and building a domestic industry. This is backed by a substantial $1 billion allocation from the National Reconstruction Fund, specifically earmarked for critical technologies like quantum. In total, Australia has invested over $1.4 billion in quantum initiatives over the past 20-plus years, so it's been building a strong research base for a while. A key recent example of this investment, and a truly ambitious project, is the joint federal and Queensland state government commitment of nearly $1 billion, specifically 940 million Australian dollars. That's going into the frontier technology company Sequantum, a US-based firm with deep Australian roots. The aim is to build a world-first, fault-tolerant quantum computer, the Holy Grail, right there in Brisbane, with an expected operational target around 2029.
That's a truly monumental investment in a single company, building that fault-tolerant machine. What are the projected benefits of a project like that for Australia beyond just having the hardware locally?
Well, the government hopes this investment will create thousands of new high-tech jobs, foster extensive university and research collaborations within Australia, and strategically position the country as a global hub for quantum technology and innovation, like Silicon Valley, but for quantum, maybe. It's projected to boost Australia's GDP by a significant $6.1 billion by 2045 and create potentially 19,400 jobs, making it a critical component of the National Economic and Strategic Plan. Furthermore, Australian research institutions are also actively involved in this push beyond just quantum. The Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organization, CSIRO, for instance, is designing quantum-safe threshold cryptography and developing practical PQC migration techniques for organizations. The Cybersecurity Cooperative Research Center, the CSCRC, conducts vital research into resilient systems and next-generation authentication technologies directly relevant to PQC. And we have world-class foundational research here too, like Professor Michelle Simmons' group, Silicon Quantum Computing, working on atomic qubits in silicon. Really cutting-edge stuff. Of course, Australia also actively collaborates internationally through crucial initiatives like AAKey's Pillar 2, which includes quantum technology development, reinforcing its alliances while building sovereign capability.
So this 2030 deadline isn't just ambitious, it's a global anomaly, showing just how seriously Australia views this immediate ongoing threat. It's a bold move to be 5 years ahead of its closest allies. But this raises the really important question. Is Australia truly ready to meet this accelerated timeline, given the complexities and the hurdles involved in such a massive transition?
What's truly fascinating here is the sheer ambition and the clarity of intent, especially when you compare it to some international counterparts. It undeniably shows a deep understanding of the harvest now decrypt later risk, which is commendable, very forward-thinking. However, as you rightly point out, we absolutely must look at the practicalities of implementation because that's where the real on-the-ground challenges emerge and where the gap between ambitious policy and achievable reality can become quite pronounced.
Absolutely. As bold as this strategy is, there seems to be a significant gap between that high-level policy and the practical realities on the ground, creating immense challenges that could potentially undermine Australia's quantum leap if not managed very carefully.
Exactly. Despite Australia's ambitious goals and its clear intent to lead, the nation faces considerable practical hurdles that threaten to undermine its aggressive 2030 PQC migration deadline. These aren't minor obstacles. They are systemic challenges that need serious attention.
And at the top of that list, from what we've seen, is what sounds like a severe and persistent cybersecurity skills shortage, which seems like it would impact everything from planning the migration to actually implementing it securely.
It's a foundational and systemic issue, yeah. Australia is facing a severe and persistent shortage, needing at least 30,000 more cybersecurity professionals by 2026, just to meet current industry demand, let alone future PQC needs. And this isn't simply a problem of not enough graduates coming out of universities, if that's part of it. It's fueled by a deeper failure of many organizations to resource their security teams appropriately, seeing security as a cost center, not an enabler. There's often a pervasive lack of management understanding of the true scale and nature of modern cyber risks, including quantum. And recruiters often overemphasize prior experience rather than actively developing entry-level talent and fostering continuous learning in this rapidly changing field. This talent deficit poses a direct and critical threat to the successful planning and implementation of a complex, multi-year PQC transition. You need people who understand crypto systems risk. A DigiCert survey further highlights this, showing that a staggering 52% of Australian firms expect to face skill shortages specifically related to PQC implementation. That's over half.
Wow. So even if the strategic will is there at the top, the skilled hands to actually do the incredibly complex work of identifying, testing, and rolling out new crypto might just not be available in sufficient numbers. On top of that, there's the immense challenge of legacy systems. Many critical systems in our infrastructure weren't designed with quantum threats or even easy cryptographic upgrades in mind at all.
That's correct, and it represents an immense financial and logistical burden for both public and private sectors. It's a huge headache. Systems like industrial control systems in the energy sector, water treatment plants, transportation networks, they often have incredibly extended life cycles, sometimes 15 to 20 years or even longer before they're replaced. These systems frequently contain embedded cryptographic algorithms hard-coded into hardware chips or low-level firmware that are not easily upgradable. You can't just patch them. Often, upgrading the crypto requires complete hardware replacement, which is both extremely costly and highly disruptive to critical operations. You can't just turn off the power grid for an upgrade. To compound the issue, many of these new PQC algorithms require significantly more computational resources, more processing power, more memory, larger keys, bigger signatures than current cryptographic standards like RSA or ECC. This poses a major challenge for resource-constrained legacy hardware like sensors or controllers out in the field that simply wasn't built with these demands in mind. Simple software updates are often just impossible. So the ASD's 2030 deadline, while strategically bold, could be seen as quite aspirational, maybe even unrealistic, given the reality of these deep-seated technical and logistical challenges in critical sectors. For instance, CSIRO's projects have already found notably low preparedness in critical sectors like finance and defense, precisely because of these legacy system challenges. They know it's hard.
And all of this, the upgrades, hiring or training new talent, the hardware replacements, it all costs money, potentially a lot of it. But it sounds like Australia doesn't currently have a clear, publicly quantified picture of the total financial cost of this nationwide transition. How much will this actually cost the nation?
That's a critical oversight right now, and a significant barrier to effective planning and resource allocation. The absence of a specific, publicly available cost estimate for Australia's nationwide PQC transition creates a huge barrier to effective financial planning for both the public and private sectors. Without a clear figure, or at least a range, it's incredibly difficult for government departments and private companies to budget accurately, allocate resources effectively, and make informed strategic decisions about migration priorities. To gauge the sheer scale of this, we can look across the Pacific to the U.S. The Office of Management and Budget, OMB, estimated the cost for U.S. federal agencies alone to migrate just their non-national security systems to PQC at over $7.1 billion US. And that figure starkly excludes costs for the massive U.S. national security systems, state and local governments, and the entire private sector. The real U.S. total will be vastly higher.
So, a monumental undertaking that could potentially dwarf that $7.1 billion just for the U.S. federal non-classified systems alone. And without a clear national cost estimate and roadmap for Australia, that becomes an almost impossible planning task for everyone involved.
Exactly. This U.S. example highlights the monumental financial undertaking that will likely be required in Australia, underscoring the urgent need for transparent cost analysis. This would allow for proper budgetary allocation by government, informed policy decisions, and realistic private sector planning for necessary investments. Ultimately, this analysis reveals a critical disconnect between the Australian government's ambitious policy objectives and the practical realities on the ground. The ambitious 2030 deadline risks a rushed, potentially insecure, tick-the-box implementation if it's not supported by a much more detailed, properly resourced, and realistic plan. A plan that fully accounts for the severe skills shortage and the intractable challenges of legacy infrastructure. The NCC Group, a global cybersecurity consultancy, has specifically recommended Australia develop a more detailed, nationally coordinated roadmap. For this very reason, more detail is needed. Overall, the consensus seems to be that Australia, despite its strong research base and clear ambition, is currently partially ready at best. There are strong pockets of research and policy intent, but clear implementation gaps, particularly in industry adoption. Currently, estimates suggest only a small fraction, maybe around 8.5% of Australian private firms, are actually using any form of quantum-safe encryption today. The ambition is commendable, absolutely. But without addressing these practical challenges head-on, skills, legacy systems, cost, detailed planning, the risk of a check-the-box compliance exercise rather than achieving true, robust quantum security becomes very, very real. And Australia's specific challenges regarding that skills gap and the prevalence of legacy systems in critical infrastructure seem particularly acute compared to some other nations.
Imagine trying to rebuild the foundations of your house while living in it without enough skilled builders, a clear architectural blueprint, or even a known budget that's kind of the scale of this challenge for the nation. So is Australia alone in facing these immense challenges, or can we learn from how other leading nations are approaching this quantum leap, maybe finding alternative strategies or lessons learned from their experiences?
That's an excellent point and a crucial step. Understanding international approaches offers vital context and potential lessons. Looking at what other leading nations are doing, their timelines, their strategies, their specific recommendations can help illuminate potential best practices, alternative pathways, and even pitfalls to avoid. It really helps put Australia's accelerated timeline and unique challenges into perspective. Okay, so while the United States, the European Union, and the United Kingdom are generally seen as leading the global standardization and migration efforts alongside countries like Canada and Japan, their specific approaches do differ. These differences provide essential context for understanding Australia's unique strategic posture and its associated risks and potential rewards. Each nation has chosen a path that reflects its national priorities, its resource capabilities, and its overall risk appetite.
Let's start with the United States then. They seem to be taking a very methodical, standards-driven approach, led by their National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST. That process seems globally influential.
That's right. NIST is leading a very methodical, multi-year, multi-phase process to evaluate and standardize PQC algorithms. It started back in 2016. This process is globally recognized for its transparency and rigor, involving extensive collaboration with academia, industry, and cryptographers worldwide. They held multiple rounds of submissions and analysis. It has already yielded significant results, including the selection in 2022 of key algorithms like Crystal's Kyber, now known as MLChem, for general encryption, and Crystal's Dilithium, MLDSA, Falcon, and Sphinx, plus SLHDSA, for digital signatures. They expect to finalize the standards for these, plus another signature scheme called FNDSA, likely by late 2024.
U.S. government agencies are coordinating their efforts around this robust standardization framework. For example, the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, has released a comprehensive roadmap for organizations, including critical infrastructure owners, to prepare for migration based on the NIST timeline.
And the NSA, the National Security Agency, also provides specific guidance for national security systems. And I understand they have a very specific, perhaps even controversial, stance on a quantum key distribution, or QKD, which contrasts with, say, China's focus.
Yes, the NSA, responsible for protecting U.S. national security systems, the classified stuff, has selected its own suite of quantum-resistant algorithms known as the Commercial National Security Algorithm Suite 2.0, which aligns closely with the NIST selections. Critically, the NSA takes a very pragmatic stance on QKD, explicitly not recommending it for securing data transmission in most operational scenarios. They cite significant technical limitations. The requirement for specialized hardware, like dedicated fiber optic links or trusted nodes, which are costly and difficult to implement at scale across large networks. QKD also requires these trusted nodes for longer distances, which can be points of vulnerability, and it's inherently prone to denial of service attacks. Any attempt to intercept or measure the quantum signal automatically changes its state, thus disrupting the communication, which is good for detecting eavesdropping, but bad if an adversary just wants to shut down your link. This position is notably aligned with the ASD's view here in Australia. Both agencies seem to agree that QKD, while theoretically interesting for niche applications, has practical limitations for widespread use. They argue that PQC offers a more cost-effective, scalable, and practical path to securing widespread communications infrastructure using software updates over existing networks. The overall U.S. government target for migrating its systems is 2035.
Okay, moving across the Atlantic, how is the United Kingdom approaching this? It sounds like they're emphasizing cryptographic agility as a core principle in their planning.
That's a key theme for them, yes. The UK's National Cybersecurity Centre, NCSC, has developed a clear, phased roadmap with a national target deadline of 2035 for the completion of PQC migration, similar to the U.S. government deadline. Their strategy is broken down into 3 distinct phases, providing more granular guidance than just a final date. Phase 1, which runs until 2028, expects organizations to complete a full discovery exercise, the crypto inventory we talked about, identify all cryptographic assets and dependencies, and build an initial migration plan. Get ready, basically. Phase 2, from 2028 to 2031, focuses on executing high-priority upgrades, like systems handling long-lived sensitive data, and refining migration plans as the PQC ecosystem matures and more tools become available. Finally, Phase 3, from 2031 to 2035, involves the completion of a full migration to PQC for all systems, services, and products. It's a staged approach.
And that idea of cryptographic agility is truly central to their phased approach. How does that work in practice?
Absolutely. Cryptographic agility is this cornerstone of their strategy. It refers to the ability for systems and organizations to seamlessly and rapidly transition between different cryptographic algorithms without requiring wholesale system overhauls or causing major disruptions. The NCSC explicitly recommends a hybrid cryptography approach, particularly during the transition period. This means supporting both traditional classical algorithms like RSA or ECC and new quantum-resistant algorithms simultaneously for the same function, like establishing a secure connection. For example, you might use both an RSA key and a Kyber key to agree on a shared secret. An attacker would need to break both to compromise the connection. This allows organizations to begin the transition now, deploying PQC alongside existing crypto, gaining operational experience while the PQC ecosystem matures and product offerings become more robust and standardized. This phased hybrid strategy crucially reduces the risk of a rushed or insecure implementation if one of the new PQC algorithms turns out to have flaws later on. It enables a more controlled and orderly migration, acting as a crucial risk mitigation pathway.
Then there's China, which we've already identified as a major player and Australia's principal adversary in this space. Their approach is quite different from the Western nations, focused much more on national dominance and sovereign control.
Indeed. China's approach is characterized by that heavy and continuous state-directed investment, exceeding $15 billion, with a distinct focus on quantum key distribution, QKD, where they are arguably world leaders, and the development of their own national PQC standards through their Institute of Commercial Cryptography Standards, ICCS. They lead significantly in quantum communications and sensing technologies, pushing for global dominance in these areas. Their strategic aim is clear: achieve technological self-reliance and gain geopolitical advantage through quantum capabilities. While they're less transparent on their specific post-quantum cryptography algorithm choices and timelines compared to NIST,
They clearly lead in deploying quantum networks and have integrated quantum efforts deeply into their 5-year plans. Some experts analyzing their progress project, they might aim for CRQC readiness by 2030 or soon after. They are known for developing proprietary algorithms, sometimes mandated for use within China, and implementing export controls on quantum technology, further cementing their unique, nationalistic, and less collaborative approach compared to the West.
Are there any other notable efforts or contrasting approaches we should be aware of from other nations that might offer lessons for Australia?
Yes, a couple are worth mentioning briefly. Canada, another Five Eyes partner, has a roadmap for PQC with a target of 2030 for key readiness milestones, aligning more closely with Australia's ambitious timeline, perhaps reflecting a similar urgent risk assessment. Japan is also making significant investments, notably with a $1.3 billion moonshot project aimed at developing an error-corrected quantum computer, which would be a transformative leap in quantum capabilities if successful. These efforts collectively underscore the global nature of this race and the varied national strategies being employed to address the quantum threat, ranging from highly ambitious to more phased and cautious. So if we connect this all back to Australia, the international comparison highlights that while Australia's bold 2030 deadline is commendable for its recognition of urgency, it's also taking on a significant amount of implementation risk with that accelerated timeline, especially compared to its key allies like the US and UK, who have opted for 2035. The UK's rigorous focus on cryptographic agility and phased migration, for instance, offers a more gradual, potentially less disruptive, risk-mitigated pathway that allows for the PQC ecosystem to mature alongside the migration. Australia's faster pace, while strategically motivated, demands even more rigorous planning, flawless execution, significant investment, and robust support across government and industry to truly be successful without introducing new risks.
This comparison truly shows the range of approaches and the unique, quite challenging position Australia finds itself in, aiming to lead the pack but facing significant hurdles. With all this in mind, the clear threat, Australia's ambitious goals, and the immense challenges it faces on the ground, what's the tangible path forward? How can Australia ensure quantum resilience and truly secure its digital future, turning that ambition into reality? Okay, let's unpack this. Australia clearly has a strong strategic foundation and the political will. But the journey from high-level policy to effective, widespread implementation requires deliberate, coordinated action on multiple fronts, making it a true national endeavor.
Absolutely. To successfully navigate this incredibly complex and urgent transition, Australia needs a coordinated, team-scored approach involving both government and industry working in lockstep. There are several strategic imperatives that really must be addressed immediately to turn that 2030 ambition into a secure reality, not just a deadline on paper.
So, what are the first critical steps the government and industry need to take together to establish this collaborative environment and get things moving effectively?
First and foremost, the government, likely led by ASD and the Department of Home Affairs, should work hand in hand with industry bodies and critical infrastructure operators to create and publicly release a detailed and continually updated national PQC roadmap. This roadmap must move beyond the high-level 2030 target to specify tangible, sector-specific milestones and perhaps even data-type-specific expectations based on risk and lifespan. It needs to provide clear, practical guidance for both public and private sectors on what to do, by when, and maybe even how to approach testing and validation. Clear expectations are key. Secondly, there's that critical need for proactive financial planning. A comprehensive and public cost analysis for the nationwide PQC migration should be conducted and released as soon as possible. As we noted with the U.S. government's initial estimate of over $7.1 billion just for migrating non-national security systems, it's clear the financial burden for Australia will be immense, likely running into billions over the next decade. A national cost estimate would allow for more effective budgetary allocation by government agencies and crucially enable the private sector to plan for the required investments, which will be substantial for many organizations. Knowing the scale helps justify the spend.
And fostering that team sport environment sounds absolutely crucial, especially given the scale of the challenge and the need for everyone, big banks, small businesses, government agencies, to be on the same page and pulling in the same direction.
It is absolutely vital. The success of the PQC transition is fundamentally a national undertaking that hinges on robust public-private partnerships. We can't afford silos here. The government should strengthen its partnership programs like the ACSC Partnership Program through formalized mechanisms for bidirectional information sharing, active co-creation of capabilities like testing tools or best practice guides, and targeted support for small to medium businesses, or SMBs. SMBs often face structural barriers, lack of expertise, lack of budget, and lack the resources of larger enterprises. but they are a critical part of the supply chain and the economy. They need help. This could include joint training initiatives, shared threat intelligence platforms specifically on quantum risks, and perhaps even government-supported incubators for developing Australian quantum-safe cybersecurity solutions.
Okay, so those are the big strategic imperatives for the nation as a whole. What about individual organizations? What are the immediate actionable steps they should be taking right now for PQC migration? What's the crucial no regrets move everyone should be doing today?
The single most important no-regrets move any organization can make right now is to conduct a comprehensive inventory of all cryptographic assets and dependencies. You have to know what you have before you can fix it. This means using specialized crypto discovery tools or even manual processes if needed to map every system, application, data store, and piece of hardware that relies on public key cryptography. Where's RSA? Where is ECC? Where are the signatures? Crucially, this inventory must involve assessing the value and required lifespan of the data these systems protect, understanding which data falls under that critical harvest now, decrypt later threat model based on Moscow's theorem, X plus YZ. This discovery and inventory process is the foundational step. Without a clear understanding of your cryptographic landscape and data sensitivity, any migration plan cannot be truly effective or risk-based. Following that, organizations should develop a phased transition plan based on their specific risk assessment. This plan should prioritize the transition of systems that handle the most sensitive or longest-lived data first, while also realistically addressing the significant challenges of legacy hardware and complex, interconnected supply chains. Don't try to boil the ocean, prioritize.
So it's about understanding what you have, figuring out what's most vulnerable or valuable long-term, and then prioritizing the fix based on risk. Makes sense. Now, looking ahead, how do we build a cryptographically agile nation for the long term? What are the key pillars for sustained success beyond just this initial migration push?
Right. Building long-term resilience requires sustained effort across three critical pillars. First, we must aggressively and systematically address the persistent cybersecurity skills gap. It's a huge anchor holding us back. The projected need for 30,000 more professionals by 2026 is a fundamental barrier not just to PQC success, but to Australia's overall national cyber resilience in the face of all threats. Australia must develop and execute a comprehensive national cyber skills strategy, a coordinated effort involving government, education providers, and industry. This strategy needs to cultivate talent right from school age, through TAFE and university, and up to board-level leadership awareness. It needs to provide clear career pathways into the sector and support continuous professional development in areas like PQC. This is a long-term investment that simply cannot be overlooked.
And that idea of cryptographic agility we discussed earlier, the UK's focus, how does that translate into a practical, sustainable approach for Australia moving forward?
The widespread adoption of a hybrid cryptography approach, as recommended by the UK's NCSC and others, seems like a very pragmatic interim and potentially long-term solution for many systems. This involves combining both traditional algorithms, like RSA ECC, and new quantum-resistant algorithms, like tethered to lithium, to protect data or communications. It allows organizations to begin the transition now, gain confidence in the new algorithms, and benefit from PQC protections, while the overall ecosystem and product offerings mature and become more standardized. This hybrid strategy reduces the risk of a hasty, insecure implementation if unforeseen weaknesses are found in early PQC algorithms. It enables a more controlled and orderly migration and builds in flexibility for future cryptographic evolution beyond PQC. Crypto agility is key. Finally, Pillar 3. We absolutely need to secure the supply chain. This is critical. Australian organizations, particularly those in critical infrastructure and government, must update their procurement policies and contractual requirements. They need to actively require that vendors, software suppliers, hardware manufacturers, cloud providers provide clear PQC transition plans and roadmaps for their products and services. When will your products support NIST PQC standards? This will help prevent future vendor lock-in with vulnerable technologies and ensure that the entire digital supply chain, from the chip level up to the application layer, is prepared for the transition, building resilience from the ground up. Ask your vendors now.
This truly underscores that this isn't just a government problem or a big bank problem. It's a whole-of-nation endeavor. It requires every organization, large and small, and arguably even individuals, to understand their role in protecting our collective digital future. So what does this all mean for us as we navigate this new quantum-threatened era? Where does this leave us?
Well, it raises an important concluding question, really. Without a detailed, collaborative, and properly resourced national plan, Australia risks more than just missing its ambitious 2030 deadline. It risks inadvertently creating new vulnerabilities in its rush to comply, or having a patchwork implementation that doesn't provide true security. The long-term security and resilience of the nation hinges on taking these strategic and actionable steps, now turning that bold ambition into a tangible, secure reality through hard work and partnership.
Okay, let's bring it all home then, and leave you, our listener, with a thought to ponder long after our deep dive ends today. #tag outro. So we've taken a deep dive into Australia's urgent push for post-quantum cryptography. We explored the existential threat posed by quantum computers, particularly Shor's and Grover's algorithms. We looked at the insidious reality of harvest now, decrypt later attacks, which are happening right now. And we examined the profound cascading consequences of cryptographic failure for national security, economic stability, and, yes, your personal privacy. We've unpacked Australia's incredibly bold 2030 deadline, contrasted it with the more phased international strategies of key allies, and importantly, we examined the significant on-the-ground challenges Australia faces, from persistent skill shortages and the rigidity of legacy systems to the monumental, currently unquantified costs of this nationwide transition.
But the journey to post-quantum resilience, while daunting, is not insurmountable. It is achievable. With a clear, detailed national roadmap, transparent financial planning, a collective team sport effort from both public and private sectors working together, with a strategic focus on cryptographic agility, using things like hybrid approaches, and with smart, continuous investments in developing talent and securing critical supply chains, Australia can secure its digital future. It can turn this quantum challenge into a quantum opportunity for leadership, innovation, and enhanced national security. But it requires unwavering vigilance, dedicated collaboration, and decisive action starting now and continuing for years to come. There's no time to waste.
And finally, our provocative thought for you. In a world where data harvested today, data you thought was securely encrypted can be effortlessly decrypted tomorrow. What does long-term security truly mean anymore for our personal and national information? And how will our fundamental understanding of digital privacy have to evolve to meet this new, continuous, and essentially invisible threat of retrospective decryption?
It forces us to reconsider the very nature of secrets in the digital age. Demanding a whole new level of foresight, planning, and proactive defense just to stand still.
Something to ponder deeply indeed. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Australia's quantum leap. We hope you feel a little more informed and perhaps a lot more curious.